继续。
These are the questions from previous days.
牧师你好，今天我知道青少年在当今的世代中确实沾染了许多的污秽，但是作为他们的师长，不是一味地去批评他们、指责他们，甚至拒绝他们，而是要去用实际行动爱他们、帮助他们，使他们出黑暗入光明。我们生活在无神论政权的统治之下，习惯了去埋怨、去藐视他们，也缺乏信心去为他们祷告。感谢主，今天却借着美国的肢体来提醒我们，要用信心去为他们祷告。谢谢你。
Young people, their lives
You're welcome. Thank you.
请问牧师，丰盛的生命是不是具备信心、知识、节制、忍耐、前进、爱众人的心就够了？
And when you have all of these things, it's abundant life. That's enough for us.
That's a great question about whether or not these things are enough. And I would not argue, but I would tell you that the increase of these things is what is meant by the abundant life.
是不是就够了呢？我们应该是这么来理解，就是在这些事情上面都要不断的增加。只要你增加了呢，那你的生命就丰盛了。
It is the growth and experience of these qualities lived out that allows the greater blessing of the life of Jesus to continue in our lives.
那最重要的事情呢，是你要不断的成长。这个时候耶稣基督对你的祝福呢，就会来到你的生命中间。
Remember, we're never arriving; we're always growing and progressing.
你一定要记得，你的这一辈子不会达到目标，而会要来不断的增长，来接近这个目标，最后的目标。
You will know you're finished and that you have run the race when we're planning your funeral.
那直到那一天，我们来为你举行葬礼的时候，你就知道这个当跑的路，你是不是已经跑完了？也就是说，只要你还活着，你就要成长。这个成长是没有止境的。
感谢两位美国牧师在这里让我们为青少年祷告，为国家领袖的灵魂祷告。我们几年前在读神学的时候，我们的神学院培训中心的弟兄姊妹就一直为国家领袖祷告，为青少年祷告。谢谢你，放在盒子里。
Thank you for teaching us to pray for the young people and to pray for the leaders of our government. And a few years ago, when I was in the underground seminary, that is what also was taught to do, to pray for the government. And thank you again for your confirmation.
《 这几样美德如此排列合理吗？还有个排列啊，信心、前进、德行、知识、节制、忍耐、爱弟兄、爱众人。我认为态度非常重要，故有信心，随之应该有前进的态度。请解释一下，谢谢。
是他重新排列的吗？He said he rearranged the order, and he feels the order like this, and asks you if you feel it is reasonable or logical. And first comes faith, and then comes godliness, and then comes the goodness, and then comes knowledge, then comes self-control, then steadfast, and then love your brother and love everyone. And also, I feel that attitude is very important. And so because you have faith, then you have godliness. So that is the attitude.
I, with all due respect, appreciate the effort to put it in a way that you might think it should work.
我很感谢你你花功夫把它排列出来。
But we are not given the freedom to rearrange the scriptures the way we think they work.
但是呢，我们没有这个自由和权利呢，把这个圣经里面的话呀再去重新安排一次。
So I appreciate it, but we are given those the way the Holy Spirit has given those to us.
虽然我很感谢你费这么一番功夫，但是呢，这个是圣灵的启示，那我们呢就还是按照这个次序去做。
As a matter of fact, when you study Hebrew and Greek even more carefully, you discover that the way things are listed is critically important. And so the way things are listed and the order in which they're listed is not for us to change.
如果你去读希伯来文的话和读希腊文的话，所以你赶快去我们学校了，是不是？他说你如果读希伯来文、读希腊文的话，他说那个次序是很重要的，你不能够随便去改变的。
请问牧师，美国孩子良好的教育是从餐桌上来的吗？能否介绍一下？我们又怎样带这些孩子归向主
？I see that the American children have a very good manner. Do you teach them starting from the table manner? And how can we train our young children to follow Jesus Christ?
Well, that's two questions. The first statement that you said that you think American children have great manners, I'm not sure which American children you're talking about.
他说，实际上美国的小孩子很糟糕，也没有那么讲礼貌的。
And really, the most effective place for any training of children, whether that's in manners or in their walk with Jesus, is always in the home.
那当然，教育孩子的最好的方法，怎么样来让他跟随耶稣基督有一个好的品行是要从家里做起。
And I would tell you that's why most governments don't support the home and the traditional family the way they should.
所以这也是为什么美国的政府并不认同我们的基督徒的这种家庭教育。
For it is indeed the plan of God to grow up the next generation for Him through the family.
所以上帝要来训练下一代的年轻人的话，一定要从家里面开始。
But I do appreciate the fact that you think American children have manners.
你觉得美国小孩子表现还不错，那我倒是很高兴听到这一点。
I do want to tell you one thing real quick, and we'll do another question and then probably be done. But we always say one, then it's two. I want to tell you a little story about the marriage discussion we had.
那我要给你们讲一个婚姻的事情，当然可能我们等一下再接受一个问题了，我们就可以结束了。但是也有可能还会有好几个问题的。
We talk about how different our cultures are in many respects.
我们刚才提到说中美的文化在很多方面很不一样。
But all of your questions related to marriage and dating were exactly the same questions we get from people in America.
但是呢，你们问到家庭的问题，问到年轻人恋爱的问题，都和美国人提出来的问题是一模一样的。
Every time a young man comes up to me and says, "How long should I date this girl before we get married?"
那当有年轻人来问我的时候，也是同样的说，这个恋爱要恋多久就去结婚呢？
I always ask him a couple of questions.
那我总是问他们一两个这样的问题。
I ask him, "Does she love you?
那他爱不爱你？
Do you love her?
你爱不爱他？
Do you think she'd be a good candidate for marriage?
他是你的一个好妻子的候选人吗？
Then marry her now before she runs away from you."
那所以如果都是的话，你就赶快娶她，免得她跑掉了。
And that's my advice to you.
这是我给你们的忠告，也是如此。
Next question.
关于青少年事工，我们内地很缺乏，具体情况就是间断性的不能持久，原因是没有有效的方法。能否请老师给一些有效的方法和意见？
Our youth ministry is very weak. The reason for that is that it's very difficult to consistently to do that, and so to do the youth ministry, because either they don't have enough manpower or gifted people, so it's often interrupted. And so, do you have any suggestions, and we can be effective in the youth ministry?
Ministry to teenagers and students is difficult no matter where you are.
不管你在什么地方，向青少年传福音都是一件不容易的事情。
Even if you try to attract teenagers and do fun and exciting things,
甚至你想尽各种办法来吸引他，来搞一些很有趣的活动。
you cannot keep up with their culture enough to make sense or be relevant.
那你要追上他们这个时代的一些想法，都是不容易的。
So you must be a people like Neil spoke of that will pray over the students of your city.
那所以呢，第一件要做的事情呢，就像尼尔牧师所说的，要找一些人愿意来为这些青少年去祷告。
Be ready to see what God will do as a result of those prayers.
然后呢，看看祷告的结果，上帝要如何的动工。
And I would tell you this last bit of advice as far as reaching students.
那作为去向学生、青少年来传福音的话，这是我最后的一些想法。
You must encourage the involvement of adults who have lived life long enough to know what's right and know what's wrong.
你要让那些成熟的、成年的弟兄姐妹来做这些事情。
You realize many of us are afraid of teenagers.
你要知道，很多的人实际上是很害怕这些青少年的。
If you don't believe that, all you have to do is look at your faces when teenagers get on the train or the subway.
如果你不相信的话，你就去搭公共汽车、坐地铁，你就知道，如果有一群年轻人上来的时候，你看看这些大人的反应。
It's like some animal just came in and we try to find a way to get away from them.
就好像一群这个野兽跑到你的面前，你就要拔腿而跑一样的。
How could they wear their hair that way or wear those clothes?
他们怎么这个头发奇形怪状的，这个衣着也是乱七八糟的。
But instead, we need to be like Gideon and let the Lord work through us and trust that the gospel will speak through us to kids.
那我们这个时候就要像基甸一样的，把所有的信心都建立在神的身上，神会要来使用我们来向这些青少年说话。
And I will tell you, pastors in this room, it starts with you.
那我要告诉在座的这些牧师们，那这一个改变要从你们开始。
The greatest minister and pastor to youth that you have in your church.
那对青少年最有效的那些牧者，就是在你们的教会里面。
Is the senior pastor.
首先是你们教会的牧师。
When the senior pastor is teaching children.
当我们作为牧者来教导小孩子的时候，
And the senior pastor is teaching the youth.
当然，这个教会的主任牧师啊，就是最主要担当角色的这个牧师，也来向青少年说话的时候，
then youth begin to see a servant leader they can look up to.
所以这个时候青少年就看到了一个仆人领袖型的这样一个牧师。
And they don't care if you're stylish or if you look good or if your haircut is old.
这些年轻人也不在乎你的头发是这个款式不好，还是衣着落伍，他们也都不会看这些东西。
But they begin to see the love that comes out of your life, and love always attracts students.
那这个时候，他们看到的是从你生命中间流出的爱，吸引青少年的。
Because of this, every year that we go to camp, our entire church staff goes to camp with our students.
所以每一次我们有办营会的话，我们的所有的工作人员、教会的工作人员都会一起和青少年一起去营会。
We want our students to see that it's these servant leaders who will love on you.
这个时候我们要让所有的青少年看到我们这些仆人式的领袖非常的爱他们。
Okay. Last one.
最后一个，这是真正的最后一个。以后把这个问题电子邮件发给他。
当怎样管教儿女，孩子不听话，爸爸妈妈能不能打他
？The children disobedient, and how do you discipline them? Can you beat them? Can you beat them up?
That is a trap question.
这个问题给我是一个陷阱啊
！I'm raising 3 children.
我正在抚养3个小孩。
And my oldest is 22 years old, and he has his own children now.
我的大儿子22岁，他也已经有自己的小孩了。
So he's his own problem.
那个是他的问题了，我不管了。
I have another daughter in college.
我还有一个在大学读书的女儿。
She's 20 years old.
20岁。
And then I have a son who's 16.
还有一个16岁的孩子。
Now the reason I tell you that is because we had to discipline all 3 of them differently.
因为我要告诉你们，这3个小孩是因为我们对3个小孩的管教的方法是不一样的。
My oldest son, we had to spank quite a bit.
那对那个大儿子，我们就常常打他的屁股。
In fact, over the door of his bedroom, I kept a stick.
在他的那个卧室的门上面，我在那里放了一根打他的棍子。
Now my daughter, you could spank her all you want.
然后我的女儿呢，然后不管你怎么打她的屁股
，and she would look at you and make sure she didn't cry.
她会就盯着你，她就不哭。
And she'd almost dare you to keep whipping her.
她的那个态度就是说，你再打呀，我不怕你。
So we learned that didn't work with her.
所以我们知道，拿着那个棍子呢，在她面前是没什么果效的。
But if we didn't let her play and we didn't let her experience a good time, that broke her.
如果我们不让她出去玩的话，她就会觉得很伤心。
And then our final son,
我们的那个小儿子呢
，he's smarter than all of us.
那他比我们每个人都聪明。
He's really sharp. He has a quick mind.
他那个大脑很灵光啊。
So he's always ahead of us in the argument.
所以不管我们有什么争论，他总是会赢。
So I have to study to figure out a way to show him he's not as smart as he thinks he is.
所以我要做一些功课来向他证明他并不是他想象的那么聪明。
I tell you all that to say you just got to treat them all differently, and you got to thank the Lord for them, and you see that God has created them uniquely fitted for the work He has for them.
所以呢，我告诉你们这一些呢，就是说，对于不同的小孩呢，也要采取不同的教育的方法，他们各自有非常独特的地方，这都是神所创造的，来为他们以后来做预备。
You've been a blessing to us. Thank you for the time. We love you. Hopefully we'll get to see you again very, very soon.
你们对我们来说这是个极大的祝福，谢谢你们。我们希望有一天我们还会再相会。